When I first picked up a film camera, I pretty much exclusively shot at 1,000th of a second. And I don't even really know why. I think I just thought it was a good shutter speed for some reason. And you might be thinking, what's wrong with that? I like fast shutter speeds and, you know, it gives me clean and clear shots. Well, I guess you're kind of right. A lot of different kinds of photography need fast shutter speeds. Or at least they do if you're shooting them in a traditional way. But after a lifetime of shooting exclusively fast shutter speeds, I realized there was something missing from my work. And no, it's not a sense of style or quality, it's motion. I've been looking at other people's work that inspired me, and obviously quite a lot of that was from years ago. And what I realized was that a lot of these pictures show quite a lot of movement. Now, obviously there was loads of other elements that make those pictures feel special as well, but this was a reoccurring thing that I noticed and thought was important. I realized that it was something that was completely missing from my work, and it's something that I don't see as much as I would have thought. So I guess I should tell you why I think it's important to use slower shutter speeds rather than just sticking with fast ones all the time. It won't be news to you that slower shutter speeds exist. If it is, then welcome to photography, I guess. But yeah, why would only using fast shutter speeds perhaps hold you back? Well, you could just shoot fast shutter speeds all your life if you wanted to, and that would be totally fine. There's nothing holding you back from doing that, and you could still shoot really good work. That's not really the point though. The thing is, slow shutter speeds can help you to create totally different compositions. Maybe an otherwise boring or mediocre shot could be totally brought to life by adding that movement. Once I started to finally shoot with more of a variety of shutter speeds, I started to feel more creative and more excited by places that maybe I wouldn't have been before. I would say it's kind of opening a whole other world up creatively. And it's not just how it looks compositionally, it's how it feels. And personally, that's one of the most important things when I'm shooting. How does it feel? When you have motion in an image, it can change the frame completely. It could feel frantic or otherworldly or even relaxing. Obviously, I'm not saying that you can't have any feeling in an image that has fast shutter speeds. That would be ridiculous. But I am saying if you don't already, then you should think about what kind of shutter speeds you're using so that you can make the most out of every situation that you're shooting in. Maybe there's loads of movement and only one person is standing still. That would be a really effective photo. Or maybe everything else is really still and there's one thing that's moving really fast, or there's a load of birds in front of you that are flapping really fast and everything else is really still in the background. But now that you know why I think slower shutter speeds can be really important, you really need to learn how to use them. But first, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. This course on making a photo book looks really helpful. Taking the photography process away from social media and making it into something real and physical is something that I think is super important. But photography related courses isn't all that Skillshare has to offer. There's a whole load of categories on becoming more creative or working with wood or even film and video courses. It's through courses that I learned how to make this channel, write scripts and make videos. So if you're looking to learn and grow, then take a look at the biggest online community for creatives, Skillshare. So if you feel like giving something new a go, or you really want to hone in on your photography even more, then click the link in the description and the first 500 people will get a free month of Skillshare. So get started today, and thanks Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. As I said before, I don't actually shoot at super slow shutter speeds. I usually would go down to maybe a 1/10 of a second to a 1/60th of a second, just enough to show some movement without it being kind of dad photography. Also, what's handy about these kinds of shutter speeds is that if you're steady enough, you don't really need a tripod. As a film photographer, all I really need is an ND filter so that I can reduce the amount of light coming in. This means that I can control my shutter speed much easier and bring it down to the lower speeds I actually want it to be. For digital photographers, you can also lower your ISO and all of your f-stop as well, and that might reduce your shutter speed to be as low as you want it to be. If you shoot film, then there's low ISO film options like Ektar 100 or Kodak 160, but I still usually shoot with Portra 400 because it's just my preferred film stock anyway. I can reduce the shutter speed with my ND filter, so I don't usually shoot at super low ISOs. So I'm going to tell you about 2 ways that I shoot that I think are really helpful and important. The first way is trying to shoot something that's moving across your frame. So let's say like a car or someone walking fast in front of you, or running, or someone on a bike, or a horse, or a dog, or birds. It could be anything. Usually if something's moving relatively close to me, then I'll shoot at like a 30th of a second. But if something's quite far away, then you're less likely to actually capture the movement because it's moving so far through the frame, so you can't really see the movement in a 30th of a second. So think about your distances. For example, in this shot, the car was close, so I set my ND filter pretty dark, my aperture to like f10, and got my shutter speed to about 30th of a second. That's slow enough to show the motion, but still manageable handheld. I love how just a hint of movement adds something extra to the composition. It feels more dynamic than if the subject was just frozen. And another way is to move your camera with the subject that's moving through the frame, which is probably called tracking. I think that's tracking. So if you look at this one, the woman on the bike was actually moving pretty fast. So I sort of tried to follow her, to track her with my camera while taking the photo at like probably a 30th of a second again. Because I was moving the camera with the woman at the same speed as she was going, she is in focus and the background is what ends up being blurry. This can make for some really interesting photos. You know, if you're in somewhere that feels particularly busy and frantic, it's a really good way of being able to show that. And to pick out a specific subject, if there's someone that you're interested in or you think makes a really good subject, then that's a good way of doing it. These are just 2 of the ways that you can use slower shutter speeds to create interesting compositions if you're in a new location, or if you want to add that to the way you shoot in general. I think it's really helpful, and it's completely changed the way that I shoot. So obviously I know that this basically says stop shooting 1,000th of a second. What I really mean is stop shooting fast shutter speeds all the time, I guess. All of your shutter speeds perform a certain task. Sometimes we overuse a certain shutter speed. Sometimes that's part of our style, and that's totally fine. But if you haven't been going to the slow shutter speed well, then maybe it's time to give it a try. I hope you found this helpful, but before you go, you should definitely watch this next video, which is about 3 photography traps that pretty much anyone can easily fall into.